I start recording. Um, okay, so just jumping right into the first question. The first question is, what's this video doing in a class on utopian projects and ideas? Um, I think that this video was we're supposed to watch this video because it kind of shows how the utopian ideas can be twisted into something that's kind of like unsettling. And how eugenics was pitched as a way to not only improve society, but somehow it ended up like justifying a forced sterilization and like a racial cleansing. Um, in my notes, I kind of wrote that eugenics was about fixing society almost, but in reality, it was mainly about control, especially over like the poor communities that didn't really have the like the same abilities as others in like more marginalized communities. And I think it fits in this class because it kind of like forced us to look at a different perspective and ask and like made us think about what costs we're like building these utopias at. Um, and how even in like the perusal text, Herland by Gilman, it presented a perfect society, but if you looked at it kind of more deeply, it was very similar to the eugenics from the video. Um, yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I said something pretty similar. I was talking about how like the video highlighted how eugenics was promoted as a utopian project aiming to like improve society. Um, what else did I say? I said how like it shows how utopian visions when tied to social engineering can lead to like oppressive and dehumanizing policies like forced sterilizations. It also kind of challenges us to think about how like scientific advancements such as like genetic engineering and stuff like that can like follow similar paths to like this society if we left it unchecked. So I just thought it was interesting to think about.
Yeah, I said that I thought it related to our class because it discussed kind of how like eugenics was like attempt to be used in a way to create an ideal society through selective reproduction. Like in the video at minute 145, it said eugenics was proposed as the scientific solution for social problems and having a stronger society. And I think that it kind of showed how like eugenics was originally like envisioned as a method to like improve society by creating like an ideal population, which aligns with like what our course is about, like the utopian idea of a perfect society. So I think they both had like the same end goal in mind, which was like a perfect society. And the video even like specifically used the term like a utopian vision on minute 40:56.
I agree. Um, for the next question, it was share some other thoughts and takeaways from the video. One thing I took away was like how deeply fixed eugenics was in the US and like how it influenced Nazi Germany. It was kind of like scary, I guess, to see how like the ideas of like improving the gene pool were used to like justify these horrible practices. Um, and like the video kind of made me think about how like these same ideals haven't entirely disappeared in our world today. Um, so like because there's still debates going on around genetic modification, designer babies, and like the ethics of selecting embryos and stuff like that. So it's kind of scary and interesting to think about like how these two kind of connect and how like the video showed us that.
Yeah, I agree. I said that I thought it was kind of like eerie because it showed like the instruments they used like to gauge like human biological capacity, and they were kind of treating them as like objects, or like even if their end goal was like to better the human race, like they said, like it kind of reminded me of an episode of a show. It was like called, I had to watch it in my English class. It was called The Twilight Zone, and it was like where once you turn a certain age, like you have to undergo surgery to achieve like societal standards and to have like a better life because of it. And I don't know. I also thought it was weird that like the doctor from the video thought that the key to reforming society was like cleansing your bowels, and he had like a spa designated for it. And yeah, overall, like just that they treated the humans as like subjects or like numbers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's kind of something that stuck out to me like most as well. The term like feeble-mindedness that was used like consistently throughout the video um like stuck out to me, and I thought it was really interesting how like in the Kallikak family the daughter was diagnosed as a moron by Goddard, and that led to like IQ testing of like the soldiers and how a lot of them came out as diagnosed morons. Um, and how like that was like kind of like looked down upon so like prominently, and how so many people were proven to be like unintelligent. Um, I also thought like connecting to something in like my own life. Like I didn't know this, but there's like a school in my town called the Goddard School, and it's for like children with disabilities. And they have like all of these different things, and like they need to get service hours, and they don't really have like a bunch of like people just like assume that they're not going to get like future jobs. And I think like the fact that Goddard like was classifying people as morons kind of like connected in my brain. I didn't realize like why it was called that school, and now that kind of like gives me a different like viewpoint on it. So that kind of stuck out to me the most from the video.
Um, so for the next question, where can you see connections between the video and what you read for last class on looking backward? I said that I saw connections between the eugenics video and what we read last class because they both involved like social and political agendas to recreate society, which is what it says in the video at minute 44:35. And both sources also mentioned like stronger future generations. Like looking backward mentioned doing that, like pursuing that through pure love marriages on page 3. And the video kind of stated how um they were going to pursue that by like weeding out the weaklings. And in the video, they wanted to do it by like preventing or eliminating inferior genetics. Like they said that like they designated like Italians as like criminals and like stuff like that, and they wanted to like create a stronger generation by eliminating. And in looking backward, they wanted to create a stronger generation by eliminating like financial or social factors.
In looking backward, everything everything was kind of about like what you said, like a social order, social agenda, and like efficiency. Um, and like everybody in that time period had this dream of like a perfectly structured future and like this perfect society. Um, but just like in the eugenics movement, it requires a lot of control and like sacrifice over your own individual life, and how you don't really have that security and privacy that you would in a like regular society like we do today. Um, I think that Gilman was inspired by Bellamy's ideas. In my notes, I pointed out that she applied them through a gendered lens. And in her land, the society is like cooperative and peaceful, but it's also very controlled, like almost like unsettling. And people don't really get to choose if they want to have kids or like how they would go about reproduction. So just like in looking backward, it made me think, is that kind of a world that is perfect in that sense? Like, does anybody really want that form of like lifestyle? Especially as like a woman, I don't think I would like really appreciate that at all, especially with like the rights and things with like having kids. Um, so that just like made me think about my personal freedoms and how I would feel if I was in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it was kind of interesting because, like, this class is obviously on like utopian like visions, but like this kind of seemed more dystopian. Like, especially like, reading things like that, like being a woman, it's kind of like, oh, wait. But something I said was that, like, in looking backwards, Bellamy imagined like a future where the government controls labor and redistributes wealth equally, aiming for economic harmony. And the eugenics movement also wanted to regulate human reproduction to create like a biologically better population. So in both cases, like the pursuit of utopia comes at the cost of individual freedom, and it's kind of like I raised like a question for me, like, can true utopia even be achieved if it like requires like so like a lot of like suppression of like personal liberties? Like, I don't know if like a true utopia can ever be achieved when um in these cases like the government is kind of controlling everything you do.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. It felt very dystopian. It didn't really feel utopian. Um, for moving on to the next question, the eugenics in Herland. Um, I thought eugenics was like pretty much incorporated throughout the entire text. Um, there was like one part where they talked about their ancestors deciding to not let criminals and like the physically or mentally defective reproduce or have children. And that's what eugenics was basically talking about throughout the video that we watched. And how like the women saw reproduction as a social duty and not really as like something that's kind of like a gift or like granted to them. Like having kids isn't like kind of that it's like important for a woman, but I feel like in this sense they just thought it was only important because they had to do it and it was more of a duty for them to like get through life. Um, they even say that they bred out things like anger and impulsivity over generations and how they designed the ideal woman. But that also means that they like kind of rid of diversity and like individual differences that kind of separate a person from a person. And in my notes, I also talked about how in real life, people were sterilized just for being poor or disabled. So even through Herland, like, even though it seems like peaceful, the same dangerous, like, logic and ideas are incorporated underneath, um, which I thought was really interesting and a little bit unsettling as well.
I completely agree. I said how like the women of the society practice like selective breeding, which like only allowed the most fit and capable women to reproduce, which like they thought like they saw it as a way to like improve the society like by eliminating the negative traits and enhancing positive ones. So I definitely thought that was unsettling. And then additionally, their communal child rearing system ensures that every child is raised according to like strict and social moral standards by like reinforcing eugenic ideals of like controlled social perfection. And the women viewed this as like kind of a form of progress, but it also like revealed the darker side of utopian thinking where individuality and free will are sacrificed for like the greater good. So
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially when like you're talking about selective breeding. Like from my notes, I have like from on page 7 where they were talking about how like only like the older women who like the only people who remembered men died off, they were left with only like asexually reproducing women. And I think that like definitely shows like exemplifies eugenics because like the trait for like regular, I guess, reproducing was like eliminated and only asexual reproducing was like the only like I guess inherited trait from then on. And it even said like how they like eliminated masculine characteristics and like the men that were like the 3 men that were visiting them noticed that they were like all tall, strong, and healthy and like beautiful as a race. And they like called themselves like like a form of human race. And I noticed like a connection between the video and Herland, where like how they both talked about how like they both were devoted themselves to making like the best kind of people. So like they wanted to be for Herland, they wanted to be the best mothers, and for like the eugenics video, they wanted to make like the best like biologically capable humans. And I thought it was interesting. Well, I thought it was kind of like unsettling that like they were like the women were even deprived like of their like right to motherhood when like if they were seen as unfit or like a lower type of like mother or like anything like referred to like a criminal kind of, and they would be raised by like they'd still be considered their mother but raised by someone else. And I thought that that was definitely like a part because it's both like I guess like not really right, like morally wrong in both videos. They both have that side of eugenics. And yeah.
I agree. So now for the last question. Oh wait, did I go yet? Okay. Next question. How can you connect today's topics, eugenics, to Module Two's theme of liberty versus equality? For this question, I said that eugenics is like a good example of how the pursuit of equality, like the ideas of genetic purity, can lead to the loss of individual freedom. And under like these policies, like forced sterilization and reproductive controls, like robbed people to like make decisions for their own life and like kind of controlled what they were allowed to do and what they weren't allowed to do. Um, and this was all in the name of like creating a better society. Um, and this kind of this this related to module two's theme of liberty versus equality, because like these people are almost getting their rights taken away with these like laws and reproductive rights and social policies because they're targeting marginalized groups such as women. And you know it's just like interesting to think about because like it's like you're not actually achieving true equality, but like they're saying that this is like a utopian society. Like it's just interesting to me how like they don't really have the right to like do what they want to do and like they don't have individual freedom. Like so I don't know. It's just interesting to think about.
I totally agree. I think that eugenics shows how equality can become kind of dangerous when it's enforced, like at the cost of your own privacy
Right.
and liberty. And obviously, like in the video, it was like in theory talking about creating the best society that they could possibly have. But it like in practice was more about restricting like who had value and who had those rights. Um, and my notes also pointed out from the video that it talked about like preserving the white middle class dominance. And like something I noted from the second segment of the video was they talked a lot about the Nordic race and like the better race and how like they take eugenics in the form of survival of the fittest. And they launched a campaign against immigration, discouraging like the melting pot of the US, which is I think like such a crucial part of who or like of what the US is today. Um, and how like they closed Ellis Island and like Coolidge signed the Restriction Act, which I think wasn't it's that's not equality for everyone. That's just equality for some. Um, in her land, liberty is also limited. Like what Maddie was saying with women, the women like live in such like harmony and grace, but everything's decided for the good of the group, including reproduction. So you have this like idea of what equality is like there, but there's no personal choices in that. Um, and yeah, like so I just kind of incorporated like what I learned about like the diversity of the facts in the video and how like they were restricting all melting pot like futures of the US. And like it kind of made me think about how that's changed so much today and how that like even in the 1900s where it wasn't really that long ago, now how much the US has grown. So I just think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I said that like I thought the major like commonality between eugenics and the liberty versus equality module was freedom. And like since in eugenics, like Maddie was saying, like individuals often didn't have the right like to their own body, or like they couldn't really make their own decisions, specifically women. And also how like liberty versus equality talked about like the disparities among races. And in the eugenics video, they talked a lot about like how certain races were deemed like inferior to other, and like even based off like their like fetal skull, or like just like little things they would like deem inferior traits. So individuals were obviously like not treated equally in any way, and they were also labeled as um like Carolyn, you were saying like feeble-minded or like morons, and so obviously that's not like equality. And like the schools and institutions that they were designated like to go to because they were labeled as morons. So I think that eugenics like exemplifies a lack of both liberty and equality by like restricting the individual's like society's freedom. And I think that we've also definitely grown a lot since 1915 regarding like these topics and eugenics and stuff like that. And I feel like it shows a lot of insight on like our societal views now on like race, class, like disabilities. And I think the US has evolved like a lot since then.
Yeah. Um, so I'm pretty sure that's all of the questions. Um, does anyone want to add anything or think we're all good? Awesome. What do I